Hey guys, in today's tutorial we're going to be making this Spitfire cake. I'm starting out with a 7-inch round covered in a very pale blue. I've also covered the board in the same and lined it with ribbon. There are tutorials linked below on how to make ganache, how to apply it to your cake, and how to cover it and get sharp edges, and even one for covering the board. Firstly, I've got a template for the name, which I've just traced from the internet onto some greaseproof paper with a pencil. I'm only going to be using it as a guide, so it doesn't have to be too specific. I cut my greaseproof paper to the size I wanted the name to make sure I didn't trace it too big or too small. Now I have some paste that's coloured a deeper blue and I'm rolling it into a long string. Taper any edges into points. Lay the paste onto the template following the shape of the letters. Cut down pieces that are too long and taper the edges. Here you can see I've slightly changed the D on the end. You only need to use it as a guide. Place it onto a foam mat to dry out. As my cake is 7-inch, I've taken a 7-inch greaseproof circle and traced the top view of a Spitfire onto it. This is so I know it will fit and I get the proportions right. There are a few different types of Spitfires, so just choose the one you want. For less drying time, I'm using internal supports. Usually I would reach straight for my foam core, but it's a little too thick for this project. So instead I'm using a UK cake card. I think a cake card in the US are just corrugated cardboard rounds that are a little thicker than this. The UK ones are thinner and covered in foil on one side and paper on the other. Here you can see what the inside looks like. It's a bit like a really thick craft card. This is thin enough though to make the wings out of. Place your template on top and trace around with the Dresden tool and it will leave an impression that you can then follow with your scissors. Do cut it slightly smaller as the sugar paste will add extra width. To hold the body in flight, you can use a kebab stick. Just cut it down to fit your template and hot glue it into place. Hot glue the stick to the top of your wings as the bulk of the aircraft is at the top and the wings are at the bottom. The name is now keeping its shape. Place your template onto the front and quickly score around the letters to help you place them in the centre. Apply the letters with water. Now that they're on, it will be easier to place your Spitfire where you want it. Take some spare paste, I'm just using some excess baby blue, and roll it into a sausage. Dampen the kebab stick with water before pressing the sausage along the stick. Flip it over and push the paste together to enclose it. Keep referring to your template to make sure it's not too wide or too long, and just simply cut it down with the scalpel. Soften the cut edges with your fingers to make it more rounded and continue to trim and define the shape. Once you have the length and the width, you can define anywhere that it slopes. To add height to other areas, such as the cockpit, just add on extra paste, smoothing it together. As you smooth and press, make sure to keep cutting it down to match your template and leave off the nose of the plane, which we will add later in black. Put it to one side to harden up. Spitfires come in various colours. I'm using a dark green and a pale brown colour, which I've made by mixing Renshaw's coloured pastes. Roll out your green but still leave it quite thick and add various shapes and blobs of the pale brown. As you kept the paste thick, you were able to roll it out and merge the colours into one thickness and make it big enough to cover the plane. Dampen the body and the wings with water before laying on the paste. Gently pat the paste to take on the shape of the plane and cut off the excess, leaving a little gap. Keep the excess paste intact and place it to one side. Wrap the paste around underneath of the plane and around the wings, cutting off any excess pieces. Place it onto a foam mat and score in some detail lines with the Dresden tool. Now with your excess paste, cut out the tail and also a top tail piece. I am no good with vehicles and haven't got a clue what all the pieces are called. I did want to call it a tail fin, but that reminds me of a fish. Whilst that sets, we are going to work on the clouds. Take balls of white paste in varying sizes and clump them together until you have a cloud shape. I didn't need any water as I'm using fresh soft paste that sticks to itself. Roll out a piece of white thinly until it's big enough to cover it. Lay it over the top and gently form it around the shape with your fingers before cutting off the excess and leaving a small gap. I only like to use my fingers to define the cloud bumps, as sometimes tools can leave harsh lines. Flip the cloud over and push the excess underneath. There you have a soft, fluffy cloud. You can make them bigger or smaller just by changing the size and amount of the white balls you use. Dampen the underneath and stick it on top of the cake to support your Spitfire. Just add a little water and push it into the soft clouds so it looks like it's flying. Then continue to add more clouds around the top of the cake to fill the gaps. Add the top tail piece with water, and to hold the side pieces we are using a short piece of wire. Just hold the wire up to your template and cut it slightly shorter. Push this through the back of the plane so equal amounts protrude. Hold one side of the wire still whilst you gently add one side of the tail. Then hold it again whilst sliding the other tail onto the wire. So they dry nice and straight, I am adding supports underneath, which comprises of random kids' craft sponges and pieces of kitchen towel. Whatever you need to get the job done. Once they feel firmer, you can remove the supports to reveal a plane in flight. The cockpit starts as an oval of grey which you just want to smooth and push against the contours of the plane. You can define it better by trimming it with a scalpel, which is much easier to do now that the plane is dry. Using some dark green sugar flared gel, I am lining around the windows with a fine paintbrush. Now simply cut out varying sizes of circles, the largest in blue, the medium in white and the smallest in red. These are added to the ends of each wing and small ones on the back of the plane. Use either black modelling paste or black paste with Tylo powder added, which is what I did here, to cut the propellers. For strength, I've left two of the propellers attached in the middle. Put them to one side until they are dry. I've added the edge to the board using tappets. They are super easy to use once you know how, and I have a full tutorial to always get good results which I will leave linked below. I have also added clouds all the way around the sides of the cake. These were slightly smaller balls all laid together in one layer so they are a bit flatter against the sides. Sticking dried paste to dry paste can be difficult unless you use royal icing. So I'm adding a soft sticky black disc to the nose of the plane which will allow me to add the propellers more easily. Firstly, add the full length piece of the propeller and then the two separate ones which should stick easily into the sticky disc. Finish it off with a pointy piece of black paste for the nose. And because I just can't leave a cake alone, when I see a gap I have to fill it. I'm drawing on some birds with some black paint and a fine paintbrush. Whilst I have the paint out, I'm drawing on some spiky detail to either side of the front. And we're done. Spitfire cakes are still a popular request, and if you've been making cakes a while, you've probably already done one. I think my first one was back in 2006, which funnily enough was still for somebody's dad, in baby blue, and had white ball clouds. Although my plane was completely flat and probably destined to crash seeing as it had no propellers. I'm guessing I didn't know how to make them back then. Hopefully this one is an improvement. You could make the plane fully edible with no supports if you had a few days drying time, but this is a good alternative if you need to work fast or if the birthday boy wants to keep it, as it will be a little less delicate than a full sugar version. Hope you find this one useful. If you did, please leave me a comment, thumbs up, a share and all that good stuff, and I'll see you again next week. Thanks guys.